Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The topic I am speaking today is a topic which is new to me as well. My area of research is not a geopolitics per se. My area of research is not defense or strategic affairs. So, if anybody in those fields working and they find something naive in my presentation, I want to offer apology at the beginning itself. My area of research is basically into Hindu traditions, Hindu texts, the Indian knowledge systems, and it is from this perspective that I will be speaking. And it is a very important point, I think, um, from a very long-term perspective. The title, as you can read, is India must embrace dharmic expansionism as a geopolitical goal. And I will shortly be explaining what I mean by this, what is the vision that I am speaking of. And this is a vision that is something which is this Hindu civilizational vision. What I am basically presenting is a civilization vision of India itself that we have somewhere down the line lost it due to a long period of invasions followed by colonialism and breakdown of our education system, and the even post independence, the kind of narrative, the Gandhian, Nehruvian, and secularism that we have adopted, it has kind of made us forget what our civilizational goals was and how our ancestors spoke about the larger geopolitical issues. So, with this very brief background, in the very first slide, I want to uh, deal with some of the common things that we have kind of taken for granted. I remember when I was in school, we were taught these things. Sometimes the teachers used to teach it. It may or may not have been in textbooks, but this is a narrative which is repeatedly created to all of us, that India is a peace-loving country which never waged war, which never invaded anyone, and only sometimes in defense we were forced to take up arms. Otherwise, there was all a hunky and dory. We were very ahimsavadis, and the second such narrative, the stories that Indians tell themselves, that is the title I have given, because we tell this to our kids. This was, we were told this when we were kids, and by repeating again and again, we kind of believe that these are true. Another such story is that, when you read these our textbooks, where it starts with Indus Valley civilization, then the Mauryan Empire, then the Gupta Empire, Harshavardhana, and then suddenly it starts with uh, you know, um, Chauhans, and then the Delhi Sultanate, Mughal era, etc. As if there was some kind of smooth transition, as if the Hindu civilization submitted before the Islamic hordes, uh, just like that, as if we were weak civilization, disunited civilization without a civilization vision. So this is the kind of narrative that is built, and we are also told that Islamic rule is beautiful, great, and they did great many things, this, that, and in the whole narrative, the truth is somehow trampled. Another such story we tell us is Gandhi and Ahimsa won us our freedom. It was Satyagraha, the Ahimsa, the sacrifice, which this Gandhian notion of Ahimsa. I'm very specific in the way I'm using these terms because see, Ahimsa is a concept which is very prevalent in Indian Hindu texts, especially in Mahabharata and as well as Dharma Shastra. But uh, the kind of ahimsa that we are celebrating today, or at least which is drilled into our heads, is the Gandhian variety, the variety that Mahatma Gandhi had propounded. And this is today as posited as the highest moral and spiritual ideal that India had ever achieved and can ever achieve in future. And the corollary of this is the notion that war is morally bad and pacifism is the way forward. I remember reading somewhere that after independence, first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru did not even want to have a very big or strong army kept because he said we are peace-loving nation, and it was this kind of misleading notions that led to the 1962 fiasco, wherein we lost so many territories to China. And then, of course, the big elephant in the room, this big story that India was a peace-loving nation that propounded the world vision of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and India's role in this world is Vishwaguru. We hear even our prime ministers today, even our Narendra Modi ji has spoken about how India should aim to become a Vishwaguru. Many of the politicians have repeatedly spoken about how Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is our civilizational goal. But there are serious problems with these stories. The problem is that these are not entirely true. In fact, many of them are entirely false. Consider this. The first point we spoke about is that India never invaded anyone. India never waged a war. I mean, this is a narrative which has been somehow drilled into us. I don't know. I cannot pinpoint the source where we got it. I mean, I have so many people have spoken to. They all believe this. But check the facts. The fact is, India was, of course, not a single political entity before. But each of the political entities, the kingdoms which were there, they were always waging one or the other wars with each other. They were attempting to expand their own kingdom. I come from Mysore, and it is a royal city. We have a royal heritage. The rulers of Mysore are the Vadayars. But funnily, in the textbooks that I studied when I was in school some 15, 20 years back, it hardly mentioned anything about the Vadayars. And whatever was mentioned was something like that, portraying them as incompetent people. And this was the also portrayed in this famous, although historically completely inaccurate serial, the Sword of Tipu Sultan, which was made to glorify Tipu Sultan and show him as some kind of savior of India, ignoring all the atrocities committed against the Hindus. The serial showed was that Mysore kings were indulging in all kinds of pleasures and ignored their kingdom. They were not competent. But the fact is that they were very good kings. They did lot of things for the Mysore. They did lot of things for their kingdom. They not only worked in the development field, etc., but more importantly, they also waged wars with their neighboring kingdoms. And and we have a bigger evidence for how Indian kings went out of their way to not just expand their kingdom in India, but also in today's geographical boundary of India, but also outside of it. One of the best example is how Rajendra Chola won in 1025 CE. He led a very successful naval expedition against Southeast Asia. At that time, the Southeast Asia was ruled by the Srivijaya Empire. It was also a Hindu Buddhist empire, and the Rajendra Chola waged this war, a naval expedition, to take control of the waters, the Malaccan Strait, and all these people, to take control of the sea trade. And it was it was a overwhelming victory for the Cholas. So much so that the Srivijaya Empire deteriorated after their defeat at the hands of the Cholas. It kind of did a death blow to the Srivijaya Empire. is this not an evidence, something very substantial evidence, which says that the the vision, the Kshatriya vision, because basically geopolitics is a topic that comes under the Kshatriya forte in the Hindu vision, the Hindu framework wherein we divide the society into four varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. It is the Kshatriya duty is this look after the geopolitical interest. And throughout Indian history, all the Indian kingdoms, all the Indian kings, the rulers, they have this expansionist vision for their kingdom, for their rule. And then the question, the second point about Hindu kings, did not, they submitted against the Islamic invaders just like that weakly, which is, of course, the greatest, uh, it is most unfair thing, that is greatest blow to Hindu pride, Hindu identity, that is done through our textbook education. The fact is, as Sitaram Goyalji says in his book, Heroic Hindu Resistance to Muslim Invaders, Hindu kings fought hard. They fought so hard that they prevented the Islamic invasion for 500 years. The first attempts to invade India happened around in 7th, 8th century, towards the late 8th century, I think. And they were repeatedly defeated, and they were able to capture Delhi only in 13th century. After this battle of Taran, wherein Prithviraj Chauhan lost. And even after that, we kept fighting, we kept the resistance. So we never lacked courage, we never lacked honor, we never lacked the Kshatriya spirit. It is only today that we are told that war is bad. We are told that having a Kshatriya spirit is bad. During the British times, what they did was all those communities which posed a martial challenge to the British rule, they were branded as criminal castes, and they were successively de-enfranchised. They were successively removed. You remove a thorn, they were removed from the Britishers' space. And that is where the gun laws, the control laws in India, that they come from. Coming to Gandhi and Ahimsa, it is now, I think I don't need to dwell much, it is now more or less established that the reason British left India was not because of any big freedom movement. The last movement to ask for freedom was in 1942, but after that nothing happened. It was basically because the British lost the Second World War, and the cost of maintaining the empire was simply huge in the aftermath of the loss, that they were kind of bankrupt. They simply could not retain the empire, and plus when this naval rebellion happened, when they tried in INA soldiers, and there was a rebellion in the British Indian Navy from the Indian soldiers, they simply realized that they cannot maintain this empire, and they withdrew. It is not through Gandhi and Ahimsa by any stretch of imagination. Coming to the issue of war is morally bad in an absolute sense, and I will be speaking about this more in the presentation. This is something, an idea which is alien to civilization, Hindu civilization. This I will be showing soon. And Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is the most funny thing. This was never a geopolitical goal. This is basically a spiritual goal, which have been. It's okay to apply, take up a spiritual goal and apply in geopolitics, but problem arises when you misapply in geopolitics. The way it is today applied is completely misapplication. They are taking a spiritual goal without care for context and copy pasting it into geopolitics, right? And this is a very utopian vision when it applies to geopolitics and makes zero sense. So, with this very quick background to the kind of narratives that is there, I want to take up more substantial approach to what is the, if Vasudeva Kutumbakam, Gandhi and Ahimsa, these are not the ideal for Hindu civilization, Hindu for geopolitics, what it is. But before going there, I want to quickly refer to this notion of Vishwaguru. Uh, we keep hearing this, even including our current Prime Minister has made repeated reference that India is a Vishwaguru. We need to strive to become a Vishwaguru, and kind of this is kind of a catchy word, and everybody, every leader, you may call it praise a lip service, or as I believe they may have internalized this message. They, the way Indian political leadership see India's role in the global scenario is that India as a Vishwaguru. What is Vishwaguru? World teacher. Basically, the Vishwaguru is something which is repeatedly posited as the civilizational vision. How Indian political leadership perceive India's role in the global politics, in the global geopolitics, in the globe as a whole, presently as well as in future. Theoretically speaking, a worthy goal in India. Why it is a worthy goal in the theoretically speaking? Because see, India has always been a knowledge-based civilization. For last many millenniums, you will see that people from all over the world came to India to study. All these Buddhist monks came from China. We had people from all across the world who took very hard journey to come and study in India. But people also came to India because of our wealth, because of our power. It is not just the knowledge. So while it is theoretically speaking a very worthy goal, yes, because all our shastras uphold jnanam as high. The nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitram iti uchyate. This is a statement in one of the texts, which means there is nothing as pure as knowledge, as pavitra as knowledge. And this is true. So seeing ourselves as a Vishwaguru correct. Okay. But the way this is being understood today is highly problematic. The ground reality is, while India is on one hand is increasingly discarding its own cultural and knowledge systems, and our children are growing up believing our ancestors were losers until the West civilized us. The West has appropriated and continues to appropriate and commercialize many of our vidyas. Yoga, Ayurveda, Dhyana, etc. The yoga is the biggest example. Our own, we don't practice yoga. Uh, Many of us don't appreciate yoga. Okay, what yoga in its full sense. But then some of the teachers, when these Westerners have started coming and they learned a little bit, they do 1 month course, 2 months course, and then they go back home and they become teachers. And what do we have today? We have beer yoga, dog yoga, goat yoga, nude yoga, hot yoga. I don't know what all. So so this is plainly put. This is a appropriation, cultural appropriation, misappropriation. This is a distortion of Hindu practices. This is not, India is not actually teaching them, because a teacher has to first judge the competency of the student and only then teach it. That is what our Shastra says. Shastras are very clear that teacher has to teach by seeing the competency, sincerity of a person. He cannot teach everything to everyone, right? But we are not doing that. We are allowing the people from other cultures who do not appreciate Sanatana Dharma, who do not appreciate Indian knowledge systems, to come and steal our knowledge, appropriate it, distort it, and reformulate it and commercialize it. Is this what we mean by Vishwaguru? Is this what we are seeing for our future? Just imagine Nobody listens to India. I mean, the situation was very bad 10 years back. Now, at least India's situation in the global scenario is much better in the present NDA government that is there, thanks to the efforts of our Prime Minister. But still, we have a very long way to go, and we cannot go it if we are just thinking in a very utopian way, we're thinking in a very myopic way, just using names like Vishwaguru will be Vishwaguru. See, what does this mean? See, currently, who will listen to a country, who will listen to a tradition, a civilization which is not assertive, which is not strong, which does not have a influence that is unaffected by other external happenings. To be blunt, India cannot be a Vishwaguru until India becomes a strong global power to which the world will look up to and is ready to listen. And this is very important because just saying that India is putting, all this yoga, dana, Ayurveda, or soft power, they are soft power, yes, but they will become, I mean, they are soft means, yes, but they become soft power only when we utilize it as a power, only when we apply it as a power, only when we reclaim our knowledge systems and thoughtfully utilize it as a power. But that is not enough. To utilize soft power, we need to become a hard power as well. Nobody will listen. Today, everybody will listen to US. People listen to China. Why? Because they are hard power. If they don't listen, they will make others listen. They will have their way. You can get so many examples wherein in many disputes on geopolitics, China always has its way. I mean, one of the criticism for Chinese expansionism is this: very that it is not a rule-based system. They use power to have their way, and all power do this. And US does it, even though US is comparatively better in a sense that it is somewhat rules-based, but the rules are articulated or framed in such a way that it is favorable to them. Without power, there is no influence, and without influence, there can be no impact, no respect. Nobody will listen to us. We cannot be a Vishwaguru. To be a Vishwaguru, then pursuit of power is very much essential. We cannot be sitting in our cocoon. India cannot be sitting in a cocoon wherein we think only, wherein the best we can think about is Pakistan as our enemy. We need to have a larger geopolitical goal. We need to be more assertive geopolitically. We need to have a long-term geopolitical vision, which will, the vision, such a vision that we have a clear-cut vision wherein we can see ourselves moving from point A to point B, wherein we will be occupying a center stage globally, will be a superpower, a global power, a strong power, whose words matter, whose actions will matter. Nobody would dare to challenge us, nobody would dare to uh, appropriate our things. Only then we can dictate our terms. So, pursuit of power is very much essential if a country or a civilization wants to make a difference, wants to bring a change. And this is where India is lacking. Indian leadership lacks vision. I'm not saying everything is bad. I'm not saying there are no people who understand this. Of course, there are people who know better than me. See, as I said at the beginning, I am a newbie in this field. I am just trying to articulate what I have learned, so that this vision uh, that percolates among the common people. We need to have an aspirational vision for our nation, not a defensive vision. Aspirational and assertive vision we need to have for ourselves, for our own country. But the vision will come, with vision comes the mindset to pursue power ethically and aim to make India great again. See, we have this saying in English which says power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But I think yes, this is true. It is. We should cannot deny it. There is a great chance that power corrupts. But power in itself is neutral. What is corrupting is the attachment to power that people have. See, what is power? What is the notion of power in Hindu civilization? It is called Shakti. And Shakti is neutral. In fact, Shakti is worship. See, we just finished Navaratri. Navaratri is celebration of power. Navaratri is celebration of cosmic, is a worship of cosmic Shakti in her many forms. We are not afraid of power. We do not look down upon power. We treat power as a mother. We treat power as something very essential, something very core to the entire universe. Without power, see, in the very first stanza of Saundarya Lahari, Adi Shankara says that Shiva Shakti Yukte, and I mean, without Shakti, Shiva cannot even move, you know. So it is the power which makes everything. Applied in a geopolitical sense as well, we need to understand it is not the power which actually corrupts. It is the attachment. It is the mental attachment and greed and such weaknesses, human weaknesses. It is called as Arishat Varga, greed, lust, anger, these things which corrupt. So what does the text suggest? Text suggests a ruler, a kshatriya or any government in today's term has to be Indriya Nigrahi. That is a one who has complete control of over his senses, complete control over his mind. That is a one who can keep his greed and his attachment in a check and can use the power, which is called as danda, the power to punish, the power to reward and punish. Who can use this power in a ethical manner, in a dharmic manner to attain greater goal. What is this greater goal? In today's term, this greater goal is to make India great again. We were great. We are a great civilization, but we are also a civilization who have been fighting a civilizational war for the last 1,200 years, and we are still fighting it. The civilizational war is far from over. So we have lost a lot of territories in the last 1,200 years. So we need to make India great again. That should be our civilizational vision. Contrast India's attitude. I mean, we do not do you study all these things in our schools, in our media debates, in our academia? No, nobody tells us. Everybody tells us India is a secular country. We were formed 50 years ago. No, 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 it's not 50, it's around 70 years. And and we are a third world developing country. But they don't tell you that we were not always third world. We were somewhere else. We had among the very big share of GDP before our whole civilization was broken down. Our economy was completely mashed, right? So we need to make India great again. This should be our civilization vision. But contrast our current narrative wherein we have forgotten our civilization vision. We have forgotten we do not have any notion of long-term geopolitical goal at all to China. However unethical and despicable their methods are, and they are unethical and despicable and very cruel in nature, but they have a civilization vision and they are playing the global power game, which unfortunately we are only now taking a baby steps towards. So what is it must India must aspire to be? See, I gave the China's example. That doesn't mean that we have to emulate China or we have to emulate US or anybody. We need to derive our civilization vision from our own, what to say, our own civilization, our own text, our own knowledge systems that our ancestors has given. See, we have a distinct advantage in the sense that we are a continuous civilization for the last many thousand years. And it is idiocy to think that suddenly we will break away from this long history we have and we will create a new India. This is what the founders of this so-called new independent India did. And this has been a disaster for our country. The socialism has been disaster. The secularism has been a disaster. Education has been a disaster. So with this in mind, I researched on the topic. What does our text say? What is our civilizational vision? What is the Kshatra vision, so to speak, in a geopolitical sense that our authors, our ancient teachers have spoken about? And I came across this notion of Vijigishu. I must tell you that before, say, 4 to 5 months, I was not even aware of this term called Vijigishu. And only when I did the research on this topic and discovered this, and then I started writing. I'm currently writing an ongoing series in Daily Guardian on these some of the things that I'll be speaking today on articulating this Indic vision of geopolitics. So, what is this Vijigishu? We find a mention of this term and its articulation in texts like Arthashastra, in Manusmriti, and many other Dharma Shastra. Basically, Vijigishu, Viji which comes from victory, one who is desire of victory, or one who wants to conquer. A Vijigishu is basically a king who wants to expand his influence, expand his territory, expand his kingdom, expand his cultural hard and soft influences. A conqueror, or one who desires to be a conqueror, one who is desirous of victory in his expansionist plan. In today's term, we cannot speak about kings, of course. In today's terms, we need to speak about political leadership. So if a political leadership, if we are saying that our political leadership is adopting Vijigishu as a mindset, as a vision, then our political leadership should have aspirations, should have willingness, and should build capabilities to make this country a global power in every sense of the word. So Vijigishu refers to a mindset that realizes that power by itself is not corrupting. It is not an end in itself. Instead, power must be used as a means to achieve noble and ethical ends. And this is one of the most important points. Our current political leadership, they use power for petty things, but they do not know how to use power where it needs to be used. They do not employ power, they are afraid of power or they are uncomfortable with power when it comes to taking larger decisions for larger goals, long-term goals, long-term visions. A verse from Chanakya Sutra says, the root of happiness, sukha, is in dharma. Dharma is ethical duties, performance of ethical duties. But the root of dharma is in artha. Artha here does not mean money per se. Artha here means power, wealth and power. Wealth is also power, right? And the root of artha is rajya or country. And of course, who is at the very core of this rajya? It is the king or the political establishment. So you see, what it is basically saying that our sukha, the overall well-being of a society, is dependent upon the dharma, how ethical is our country or society. But the ability to practice ethics, to live a happy ethical life, is rooted in artha. That is how strong a nation is. Because stronger a nation, more it it facilitates its citizens to pursue their dharma, artha, kama, moksha, the four purusharthas, and attain overall well-being. A weak nation, see, take the socialist communist nations. So many people suffer there. Take the Latin countries wherein so much problems are there. Even in Africa, everywhere. See, problems are everywhere. But wherein the state is weak, the problems manifest hundredfold. The state has to be strong. So that is why a strong state is the Rajya, is at the root of earth. The stronger the state, the stronger is the uh, economy, stronger is the application of power, is stronger is the influence, and more means the society is endowed with to fulfill dharma and hence attain sukha. Medatithi, the famous commentator on the Manusmriti, a much bad-mouthed text, unfortunately, but a text which has so much value today, even today. It has so much knowledge, so much wisdom that we can use it today. So Medatithi, this commentator on Manusmriti, he defines three qualities of Vijigishu. The three qualities are that a king who is a Vijigishu, he should have his people on his side. That is, he should have the support of the people for his endeavors. Because otherwise, without people support, then he cannot even think about expanding his kingdom, cannot think about playing the larger role, because there will be inner rebellion within us. Just imagine, recently the Modi government brought the CAA, and how nefarious elements tried to do this anti-CAA protests everywhere, the Shaheen Bagh and all this happened. But majority of the population were in support of the government. But if this were not so, then things would have happened in a very taken to a very bad turn. So Vijukeshu is one who has people on his side. The second quality is he has made up his mind to conquer a certain part of the world. So he has taken a sankalpa that, look, I think I have all the things needed now, and I think this is the right time. I think for the good of the people, for the good of my subjects, for the good of this kingdom, I need to expand so that more resources can be tapped into, more influence can be increased, so on and so forth. And thirdly, he must be endowed with strength, courage, and all other resources. So he must have the capability, he must have the mental sankalpam or mental uh, what's the conviction and desire and a decision that has to take up this expansionism, and he should have people on it. Kautilya further says that Vijikishu is one who is possessed of good character and best fitted elements of sovereignty, and is a fountain of policy. Thus, the vision and willingness, capability and competence, and the popular mandate all are necessary for a country to become Vijikishu. See these enunciations. Here, it is not being said that a country has to be expansionist or a Vijigishu just for a sake of some greed. No, it is saying the leadership must be of good character. That is, a leadership must have a clear-cut vision. They must have the welfare of their citizens, welfare and the long-term vision for the country, for the good of the country, for the overall good of the country. And they must have these capabilities. And if they do not have the capability, they must build these capabilities such that 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 50 years down the line, what the plans can be put into motion. So this is what India must aspire to be today. We need to adopt Vijigishu, the ideal of Vijigishu as a maxim, as our geopolitical vision, as a geopolitical mindset. We need to start thinking not in terms of what India, not in terms of India as a third world country, as India as a developing power, but in terms of a long term, say 50 years or 100 years vision of where India wants to see itself in 100 years. See, today's geopolitical scenario is different, but 100 years from now it will look quite different. Just imagine, 5 years before the situation was quite different. In post-COVID, the geopolitical situation suddenly changed. You know, suddenly we are saying China is pushed into a corner, but they are still strong. They are not uh, daunted by this. But suddenly, India is now holding these Quad talks and all these things happening. The geopolitical changes happen all the time, and sometimes it happens suddenly, sometimes it evolves slowly. So we need to have a long-term vision and not a short-term vision. And China has such a long-term vision. I was reading this wonderful book, The Hundred Years Wars, or something like that. The title is by American defense researcher. He says how China, since 1950s, it has a 100-year vision, and it is slowly building to it to become the world power. We should not emulate China or US or any countries, but we need to come up with our own vision, our own plan. We need to chart it out. The first step would be to recognize the need for India to aspire to become a Vijigishu and then to become a Chakravarti. The Vijigishu is one who wants to conquer, one who wants to win, but a Chakravartin is one who has attained that goal, has become a global power. So first, we need to change our global vision. We need to start seeing ourselves as a Vijigishu and not just as a developing country with no global ambitions. Second, we need to have a goal to become a Chakravartin, and we need to work out a plan, chart out a plan with milestones, how to reach it. And this would be take a lot of research, lot of consultations, and this could be a dynamic thing which involves lot of overlapping areas of defense, economy, foreign policy, and so many other things, right? But before going further, in the context of Vijigishu, we need to understand another a framework that Kautilya and other Hindu texts give. It is the framework of Mandala, the Mandala theory. Always the Vijigishu is mentioned in the context of Mandala. Mandala means a circle. It's a Mandala is basically a theory of statecraft, wherein it has been conceived to help Vijigishu. Vijigishu is the most important aspect, central element of this mandala. Is at the center of this mandala, and the whole framework has been designed to help this Vijigishu to understand the global geopolitical game and assist him in real time to play this game and eventually reach this goal of becoming a Chakravarti. The Chakravartin can be loosely translated as world power in today's term, but a proper translation would be to attain one who attains dominion over his chakra. Chakra is a circle of influence, circle of geopolitical influence. India, for example, at one point of time had a geopolitical influence of what today constitutes Tibet, Afghanistan, Pakistan, even Central Asia, Southeast Asia. We had a huge geopolitical influence, and this influence could be in many ways. Some of these areas were under direct control of Indian kings. Some of these areas we influence through trade, through culture, through both soft and hard power. I gave the example of Cholas, for example, right? So in today's language, a Chakravartin is one who has become a global superpower and has established his influence everywhere. And Vijikeshu is one who aspires to attain this. The Mandala theory conceives the world in terms of circles of geopolitical allies and enemies with Vijikeshu at the center. There are 12 components, but of which four are most important. The four is first is the Vijikeshu or the king bent upon conquest. The second is Ari or the enemy, who is the main contender, main opponent of this Vijikeshu. The third is Madhyama, who is an intermediary. And the fourth is Udasina or a neutral. And I will come describing shortly what are these. The rest of the elements are basically friends and allies of these four uh, major elements. India today is in a very unique position because see, what is the meaning of speaking about all this? The meaning is that it is very much useful to our present situation. India today is in a unique position because it is ruled by a party which has a popular mandate. It has capability and competency as well. But somehow, at least in my limited reading of the current happenings, what is lacking is the vision, willingness, and a deep desire in Indian leadership to take India to a global stage, not just economically. See, we are doing economically. We are trying to be on the global stage economically, but we need to move further. We need to take up the center stage in every sense of the word. And this can happen only when we commit our geopolitical policy, our foreign policy to this vision of Chakravartin, to this vision, aspiration of a Vijikeshu. So let me describe the four elements that in the mandala theory. We already saw what Vijikeshu is. The Ari is the geopolitical enemy of the conqueror, the Vijikeshu person. And these are of three types. The Kautilya and other texts this speaks about three kinds of geopolitical enemy. They are called as natural enemy, artificial enemy, and the neighboring state. This is given in a text called Veeramitrodaya, a text on Dharma. Natural enemy is one who is equal in status and power to the Vijikeshu, and hence is naturally an opponent. The artificial or the acquired enemy is one which is antagonist to Vijikeshu and is bent upon creating problems. And the third is, of course, a neighboring state. See, these are all must be understood as frameworks. See, the mandalas, the Vijikeshu, these are all frameworks. These are all not fixed concepts. These are all frameworks which need to be interpreted to our situation. So, I am just giving an example of how we can interpret in today's situation. For example, Pakistan is a good example of a state which is both an artificial enemy, which is hell bent on, destroying us through thousand cuts, as well as our immediate neighbor. China, especially in its post-Tibet annexation, it has fallen into all the three categories. Post-Tibet annexation, it has become a neighboring state. It is an artificial enemy which wants to undermine India. It is also a natural enemy because it treats us as someone with the potential to pose a challenge to it in the Asian geopolitical geography, right? And Kautilya specifically says that not every neighboring state is a geopolitical enemy. It all depends upon intentions and attitudes towards which we. So next, after the enemy, we have the Madhyama or the intermediary. It is basically a territory which is close to both the Vijikeshu and its immediate enemy, the Ari. And it is capable of helping both, whether united or disunited, or resisting them individually as well. Nepal could be a good example of Madhyama, but though in a strict sense, it is no position to resist either India or China. Right? Udasina is the neutral. A US or America as the United States is the best example for a neutral power. It is a power which is situated far away from the territory of Vijikeshu, Ari, and Madhyama. That is, US is currently geographically very removed from South Asia, right? But it is very powerful. It is powerful to help or resist either a Vijikishu, Ari, or Madhyama, or individually or all of them together, right? So it's a very powerful nation. So United States fits into the framework of Udasina. So these four components form the root of geopolitical circle. And a Vijikishu is expected to continuously put efforts to consolidate his position, expand his circle of influence and control, and reduce the power of others in the vicinity. Reduce the powers, especially undermine his enemy. See, how in the current scenario, you can see that China is continuously trying to undermine our border. It is continuously deliberately keeping our borders conflict alive. But Indian policy, even now, is to recognize one China policy. We have still not recognized Taiwan as a legitimate country. So, I mean, it is time, the direction that I am trying to point out, that India should thoughtfully, not carelessly, thoughtfully take up measures which undermines its RE, its enemy, and in the South Asian scenario, it is definitely China as far as India is concerned. It has to continuously, India has to build its power, capability, and at the same time undermine not only undermine the mechanizations of the enemy against us, but also through our own proactive efforts, undermine the enemy, dismantle the enemy as a whole. And this is where we are not doing. We are still our mindset in foreign policy is still a defensive mindset. We need to change this into an offensive mindset. That is, this offensive mindset is what is called as Vichigishu mindset, right? We shift from a position of defense to a position of offense. So the ideal of Vichigishu is what ancient Indian rulers aspired for. It is these aspirations that made India global power and a Vishwaguru in the past. And India can again become this Chakravartim and a Vishwaguru it once was. The starting point for this is to adopting Vijigishu as our aspiration, as our mindset, as our change in our foreign policy, change in our foreign outlook. Now coming to but there are some aspects to what I just spoke about. I spoke of Vijigishu, Chakravarti, and expansionism, but still there are certain concerns, and rightly, especially the term expansionism is a bad term, is not a well taken term, especially in discussions of foreign policy and global affairs. And this is because, despite the fact that geopolitical expansionism has existed throughout history and across the world, and it is a fact that it exists even today, still, because of the memories of two world wars that happened in the last century, this memory is still fresh. And because of this, we have a tendency to perceive war and expansionism as inherently bad. And there are a lot many people who will advocate extreme pacifism as a way forward for peace. See, all this pacifism, Gandhian Ahimsa, looks good on paper, but and this is not fully unjustified. I say yes, the world wars were bad. The war is bad in the sense that it has serious consequences on the ground. It leads to a lot of killing, a lot of families which are broken down. Yes, definitely. But the utopian idea that somehow pacifism will lead the way for peace is utopian idea, and it has very little basis for how the world really works. See, I remember this serial, a Hindi serial I watched. I think I could not watch more than one episode. It portrays some utopian kingdom wherein there is no army. They are so peace-loving people. They have no standing army at all. Just imagine the naivety of this kind of narrative. If you are not strong, then rest assured somebody else who is strong enough is going to come and occupy you, is going to come and slaughter you, is going to come and create huge kind of uh, you know inhuman activities which you wanted to prevent and hence did not have an army in the first place. So that is why this extreme pacifism and such ideas, they do not have a basis in reality. Aggressor will always be there, and many aggressors, most aggressors are not ethical. They are driven by greed, they are driven by uh, obsession, and they do not have mercy. See, the Hindu ideal of Kshatriya is that a Kshatriya's duty is to use power to protect the weak, to protect the good. And in fact, Krishna says that he took avatara to protect the weak and the good against the adharma, right? And he says whenever dharma deteriorates, he takes again and again to protect dharma, protect the weak, right? This is the Kshatriya ideal, that to use power for the good. So the fact is, in world politics, even today or throughout history, self-interest has always been supreme. Here, the conventional notion of ethics do not apply. See, conventionally, we speak about something like, you know, non-violence is good and this is bad. Uh, you should not tell lies. Falsehood is bad. See, these are all correct. But what is ethical in our day-to-day life, in an individual level, is not true in a geopolitical level. The very notion of spy, the spying, the notion of secrecy, and all this, even Kautilya speaks about a very detailed spy network. This is a field which is completely full of deception. You cannot apply normal rules of ethics to how a country runs, the issues of geopolitics. It has its own conventions of ethics, it has its own rules of ethics. And in geopolitics, self-interest here means the interest of a particular nation, particular country, particular civilization is at most important. India's interest is at most important than all other notions of ethics. So the foremost duty of a ruler or a government is to ensure that overall well-being of his subjects, and this not only involves fighting aggression with aggression, not only involves being defensive, defending oneself, but also being aggressive, also being expansionist, also being proactively, continuously striving to expand one's territory and influence for the good of the whole kingdom, whole civilization. And Kautilyan Mandala theory aims to achieve justice. When we speak about expansionism, the term I have used is a dharmic expansionism. Is it something I have made up? No. This is something I have derived from the text like Kautilya. Kautilya says there are three kinds of expansions possible. He calls it Dharma Vijaya, Lobha Vijaya, and Asura Vijaya. And those who do it, the kind of nations which involve in it, are called as Dharma Vijayi, Lobha Vijayi, and Asura Vijayi. Who is a Dharma Vijayi? A Dharma Vijayi is a kind of a righteous conqueror who is satisfied with the opponent accepting his suzerainty through mere obedience. That is, we see this in how Mahabharata and other places. The kings used to go for Vijaya Yatra, Digvijaya Yatra. They defeated many kingdoms, and these defeated kingdoms accepted uh, the victorer as their Chakravarti. Yudhishthira did Rajasuya Yagya, right? But Yudhishthira did not physically occupy the territory of this defeated kingdom per se. They were left to rule, and they were in turn asked to provide some kind of tax and some kind of tribute, etc. So a Dharma Vijayi is one who, wherein he is happy to accept, when he is happy when the opponent is accepting the superiority of this nation, the victor, and but the Lobha Vijayi is one who wages war to gain in terms of land and wealth. He wants to have territory, he wants to have wealth, he wants to fill his coffers. And Asura Vijayi not only takes wealth and land, etc., he completely tries to vanquish the opponent. He completely tries to destroy the opponent. Writing about the superiority of Dharma Vijay in terms of ethics, V.R. Ramachandra Dikshitar in his book War in Ancient India says, according to Kautilya, Dharma Vijaya meant that a conquering king was satisfied with the acknowledgement of his overlordship by the inferior or the defeated powers, as also by others. It is a righteous method of warfare where diplomacy and conciliation were pressed into service to avoid actual fighting. In Kalidasa Raghuvamsha, King Raghu is praised as the Dharma Vijayi, conquered many lands, but restored the lands to the defeated kings instead received only symbolic tribute. We see Indian kings like Samudragupta following Dharma Vijaya ideal. But while this is definitely an ideal, there is a caveat that needs to be added here. What these three kinds of expansionism that Kautilya speaks about shows is that not all kinds of expansionism is bad. Not all kinds of expansionism is unethical. We need to be very careful while making judgments, passing generalization. A Vijigeshu vision can be such that it is ethical. It is for a right purpose. But a caveat needs to be added here regarding Dharma Vijaya is that while it is ideal form of an expansionism, Dharma Vijaya is the ideal form of expansionism. However, in reality, it may not always be desirable. I mean, see, we need to differentiate between theory and practice. The three modes, we have to understand these three kinds of these three kinds of expansionism in two definitions as three modes of conquest that anybody can apply. We should not see these three modes of conquest in three different silos as in isolation, but as three different options available for every nation, every ruler to properly utilize them based on different situations. This understanding is important because let me give you an example of misapplications of ideals of Dharma Vijaya. We all know about how Prithviraj Chauhan lost to Muhammad Ghori. But before he lost in the second battle, he had won against him in the first battle. But he allowed Muhammad Ghori to return. He allowed him to return because of the ideal of Dharma Vijaya he was adhering. And this was a huge mistake because it not only cost Prithviraj his life, it had a huge cost. The Hindu civilization had to pay huge cost for it. We had to suffer centuries of slavery under Islamic rule, wherever women were raped, women were converted, our temples were broken, we had to pay jizya. Just imagine. Similarly, India messed up in recent history, India messed up Tibet situation. It is India's lack of expansionist mindset which resulted in China, which is clearly Asura Vijay, not only gobbling up Tibet in entirety, but also causing destruction to life, culture, and religion of Tibetan people. Why is China Asura Vijay? Because it did not attack Tibet to just establish its supremacy. It completely it has tried to completely kill the soul of the Tibetan soul, the Buddhist soul. It's completely wiped out the culture of Tibet. It has created huge, it is genocide of people there. It's clearly Asura. So when the Arthashastra mentions about this Dharma Vijaya, Loba Vijaya, and Asura Vijaya, we need to understand in two different ways. One is as three modes of expansionism that are available for any ruler, any nation which wants to become a Vijigishu. And second, based on the motive and the primary mode adopted by a Vijigishu, the Vijigishu can be classified into any of the three categories. So a nuanced way of understanding Kautilya modes of conquest is that the three modes in the hands of a dharmic Vijigishu, who while fighting a dharmic battle and has the ideal of Dharma Vijaya in mind, he does not hesitate from employing modes of Lobha Vijaya and Asura Vijaya wherever necessary. It is not for no reason that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that there is nothing better for a Kshatriya than fighting a righteous battle. What is a righteous battle? A dharmic battle is one which is based for a dharmic reasons, and in such a battle one must employ all the means necessary. The three modes of conquest as well as the four strategies of Samadama, Danda and Veda. Let this sink in. What I'm trying to say is, if we are to divide conquerors or those with expansionist attitudes by way of their motives, we can divide it in three. But each of these three people can adopt these Dharma Vijayi, Asura Vijayi, and Lobha Vijaya modes or methods as well, based on different consequences. So the same terms can refer to the player, the actor, the Vijigishu, as well as the method used by Vijigishu. So let me just clarify this. Now you will be able to make more sense of it when we speak it this in the terms of what it means on the ground today. Consider China. As I said, China, if we consider its intention, if we consider its methods of how it is doing its expansionism, by intention, it is very clearly a Asura Vijay. It wants to have a complete control of the globe. It wants to be unipolar global power, and if it has territorial ambitions. It did not attack India's the Ladakh areas now and the Galwan etc. Just just to threaten us. It wants to occupy the territory. It wants to occupy territory in the Southeast Asia as well. So it is the Asura Vijay, and it does not care about the lives of people, the cultures of people. See, the cultural genocide in Tibet is a big example. So by motive and its actions, China is clearly Asura Vijay. But in its actions, the modes it is applying the modes of both Asura Vijaya as well as Lobha Vijay. It is using economics, the projects that it is currently doing, the Belt and Road project. It is clearly it is a mode of Lobha Vijaya, wherein it is using economy to blackmail countries, right? On the other hand, United States do not have a geographical territorial ambition. It has more of an economic ambition. So by motive, it is a Lobha Vijay. By motive, it's a Lobha Vijay. But it also applies all the three methods, the methods of Dharma Vijaya, Asura Vijaya, and Lobha Vijaya at various situations and with various countries and geopolitical games. What I am arguing is, it is India alone which has a capability to emerge as a dharmic Vijigishu, which emerge as a Dharma Vijayi as far as its motive is concerned, because it is our civilization which has dharma at its very core, which has ethics at its very core, which has the good of the world at its very core. Sarve bhuvantu sukhinaha. This is our core civilization vision. All the people of the world should be sukha. So we alone can emerge as a dharma vijaya, as a dharmic vijigishu, who has dharma as its motive, but who will not hesitate to apply all the three modes of dharma vijaya, asura vijaya, and loba vijaya to attain that goal. So what all this means for India today? What does it actually translate in current terms? If I have to say that, see, the title says India has to embrace dharmic expansionism as a geopolitical goal. So, what does it translate in a more substantial sense, more concrete sense, not in abstract sense that we were speaking? First, it would mean, as I see it, in my limited understanding, I will again add. First, it would mean that the Indian state will have to recognize itself as a civilizational state, as a Hindu civilizational state, which is many millennia old and not a modern nation state created in 1947. The greatest baggage that we have been carrying on our backs since 1947 is this, that we are a modern nation, modern state created in 1947. We have to give up this baggage and we have to adopt, we have to reconnect with our civilization, with our notion of being a Hindu civilization state. With this change in mindset, what does this change in mindset imply? It implies that second, that Indian state will then, if we accept that we are a Hindu civilization state, then we will recognize that Indian civilization, the Hindu civilization, has been in a perpetual war since the last 1200 years, which has been imposed by Abrahamic religions, European colonizers, and other global geopolitical actors. So, we accepting that we are a Hindu civilization state implies that we recognize all the threats that are being posed to our civilization as a whole, and to recognize that we are in this civilization of war from last 1200 years, with the first attempt to in Islamic invasion started. This is a perpetual war because the enemies are still there. They are not, and we have continuously lost territories, and this is very important. Indian state has to recognize, will recognize, in case we accept this dharmic expansion as a geopolitical goal and ourselves as a Hindu civilization state, the Indian state will recognize and accept the historical fact that the perpetual war has cost India hugely. Over the last 1200 years, it has cost us hugely. Yes, we have survived as a civilization, but we had to pay a huge cost. We have lost in terms of geography, in terms of territory, in terms of culture, religion, and civilization in ethos. We have lost our areas of influence. We did not lose our territory only during 1947 partition. Of course, we lost Pakistan and Bangladesh then, but it was not the only time. We have been continuously losing territory since the advent of Islamic invasion. On the eve of Islamic invasion, India as a civilization state at that time, it not only included present countries of Pakistan, Bangladesh, but also Afghanistan and beyond, some portions of even Central Asia under its geographical control. But more importantly, in the north, the Hindu Buddhist influence was present in Central Asia and China. This influence was present throughout Southeast Asia. We lost all of it. While we lost the direct geographical territories at some places, we lost cultural civilization influences in other places. And post independence also, this loss has not stopped. We lost Tibet, we lost Aksai Chin to China, and we have been losing. I have read news about how under UPA government we have lost some territories, and now also there are conflicting reports of what happened in Galwan. Some say that China is sitting on that territories it has occupied in April. So we are continuously losing territory. So what would in this scenario, what would it mean for India today that we decide, for example, just say India today takes up this decision, Sankalpam, that from today we will become a Vijikishu. We will have a dharmic expansionism as our civilization, as our geopolitical goal. What would this mean? It means that once the Indian state recognizes these historical and civilization realities about our nation, then we will have a clarity, necessary clarity and confidence to develop what we need to do next, to develop an expansionist geopolitical goals for retaking the lost geographies and cultural spaces, and finally bring an end to the perpetual war that has been imposed upon Indian civilization. See, what it means is, what I'm trying to say is, we have to adopt a dharmic expansionism as a geopolitical goal, because by adopting such a goal only we can achieve two things. The goal in geopolitical terms will be two. One, to retake all the lost geographies and cultural spaces that we lost in the last 1200 years. And this retaking may involve geographically undoing the partition, wherein we lost Pakistan and Bangladesh, as well as the geographically retaking the territories of Afghanistan, etc., which we lost. But it will also involve increasing our cultural influences in other territories like Southeast Asia, which has now become completely Christianized. So it is a complicated goal, and it will not happen in a day or two. It will take decades, it may take a century or two. Secondly, it means that we will bring an end to this perpetual war that the Abrahamics have been waging against us. The conversions, the love jihads, and all these threats, it may be inside the geography of India, it may be outside the geography of India, we will have to defeat them, we will have to end them once and for all. So this has to involve Indian state employing all the three modes of conquest: acquisition of allies, acquisition of wealth, acquisition of territories, acquisition of and complete vanquishing of the enemy as and when necessary. The internal, the external, they have to go in hand. One cannot, we cannot say we will pursue this now, we will pursue something later. This never works. We have to simultaneously pursue all of them. Being Vijikishu means that we will take a sankalpam today that we will undo the partition, we will retake the geographies we lost in 1200 years. We will retake much more than that. We will retake all our cultural spaces as well. Why? Because these legitimately belong to us. This belong to us. When we speak about Bharatavarsha, Bharatakanda, when we take religious sankalpa, we speak about um, Bharatakande, Bharatavarshe, Dandakaranye. The Bharatakanda is very vast. It is very, very vast. We need to retake it because we lost it. Retaking it back is definitely not adharma. It is a dharmic goal. It is our civilization. We are righting a civilizational wrong. We are correcting the defeat which happened to us in the past. We are writing this. We are correcting this. We are achieving what we lost. But more importantly, this is the right way forward because India alone has a capability to be a dharmic Vijikishu, to be a dharmic Chakravarti, to be a Dharma Vijay. Because in the core of our civilization, we have this notion of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramaya. Let there be sukha for everyone in all corners of the world. It is our civilization alone which have this. The Abrahamics don't have it. They divide the world into kafirs for believers, or infidels and the believers. We alone have it, and we alone have this. We alone have this capacity to bring a dharmic world order across the globe. So this becomes a dharmic duty for us. So when Aurobindo said India's duty is to uphold Sanatana Dharma, India exists to uphold Sanatana Dharma. I think he meant this. I don't know. I don't know Aurobindo, of course, but this is how I interpret it. To uphold Sanatana Dharma, to create a world order based on Sanatana Dharma, India has to be global superpower. India has to have a dharmic expansionist outlook. India has to take proactive measures to increase its power and influence, take back the territories it lost, take back the cultural spaces it lost, using all the means necessary. And India cannot move forward in this to fulfill this agenda, to fulfill this civilizational purpose which is given to it by the very divinity, by breaking itself from its past. The only way forward is to accept the reality of our past, fight the perpetual civilizational war imposed upon us, and embrace dharmic expansionism as a geopolitical goal to reclaim the lost geographies and cultural spaces and fight our way to become a global superpower. To conclude, we have to make our new mantra. Our geopolitical mantra cannot be Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which is applied in a very wrong way. See, perhaps I'll be writing someday on how geopolitical and how Vasudeva Kutumbakam can be rightly interpreted in a geopolitical sense. It's a spiritual goal wherein, but in geopolitical sense, the way it is applied today that everyone is one family, I mean everyone is equal. We should not be aggressive. We should not recognize our enemies. It is like Hindi chini bhai bhai. That is not what Vasudeva Kutumbakam means. In fact, what funny thing is, it this does not recognize the notion of family in Hindu tradition. Family is not a equality structure in Hinduism. It is a hierarchical structure. The father is at the head of the family. The parents have the position of power, but they also have more responsibilities and more restrictions. The children do not have power, but they have a lot of freedom and very less responsibilities. So, if we are to interpret Vasudeva Kutumbakam in this sense, in a geopolitical sense, then we have to understand that in our vision of world as a family, we are the head of the family. And being the head of the family, we have great responsibilities, but also great power. And this power helps us to teach our children, which are the other countries, by using any means necessary. In a geopolitical sense, it involves using sama, dama, danda, veda. If the children is wayward, if he is taken to adharma, then we have to teach him using harsh means, right? This is the way to interpret in a geopolitical sense and not the way that is currently done. Anyways, I want to end by saying that our new mantra should be Veera Bhogya Vasundhara. This is the motto of Rajputana Rifles. I think this must have existed among the Rajput communities even before Rajputana Rifles adopted it. This is actually a half verse which is found in Shiva Purana, but the context there is different. But in a geopolitical context, it is first mentioned as, at least to the best of my knowledge, in an anthology of Subhashitas called Mahasubhashita Sangraha, wherein it says, casting of the incompetent, the competent king enjoys. The Lord of the men, not there is mercy, etc. The hero's enjoyment is the Veerabhogi Vasundhara. That is a hero, a nation, a king who is a hero, who is a Vijigishu, he will cast off, he will defeat, he will overthrow the incompetent nations, incompetent kingdoms, and he will enjoy, he will occupy those territories, he will increase his influence, and he will enjoy the earth. Enjoy the earth means he will rule the earth. He will provide a proper rule to the earth. This should be our geopolitical goal. This Veerabhoga Vasundhara is the maxim, the mantra which best captures Vijigishu. An incompetence can be of many nature. We need to understand incompetence could be of different nature. Incompetence could be, in the form of administration. Incompetence could be in the form of ethics as well. Dharma, artha, kama. Or a incompetent kingdom could be in any or all the three of the categories. In the category of kama, an incompetent kingdom is one where the citizens cannot fulfill their desires in a proper way. It is either too poor or they do not have means, etc. In terms of artha, an incompetent kingdom is a non-prosperous kingdom wherein the people are put to a lot of troubles, wherein the country is completely mismanaged, corrupt. An incompetent kingdom in terms of ethics is a highly corrupt kingdom, highly unethical kingdom, a country like China, which has put its own citizens into great misery. It has killed its own citizens, it has cultural genocide and so many things. That is incompetency with respect to dharma. So it is a duty of a Vijigishu to cast off these incompetent kingdoms and establish competency, establish dharma in the world. And such a hero, such a veer, alone is fit, competent to enjoy the earth, competent to rule the earth. If India were to adopt this as our new mantra for geopolitics, we would be turning a very new chapter which has potential to make India great again, which has potential to make India a great civilization again, a great superpower, a world power, who will then be a Vishwaguru in a true sense of the word, because then our words matter, our decisions matter. We will have greater responsibility, yes, but also we will be able to bring a dharmic world order.
The gun law in India, right? To say that, to give this, thought to people, to say that we have always been about ahimsa, we never waged any war. Maybe the standard or the point was to say that we never did atrocities. We did not enslave people. We did not kill people for no reason, but we did wage war in the past. So when you talk about gun law, there are some discussions happening right now, not at a very large scale, but discussions to say that we need to make the law little lenient so that people should be able to buy weapons, not like US for sure, where you can buy it from a normal departmental store, but yes, should be able to buy. So, do you think that could be a possibility in India? Not a free purchase, but yes, some leniency, provided you have a good reason. You also talked about, misrepresentation of yoga, right? But do you think that is because we as Indians uh, do not say that, no, this is not the right way to do it? For example, I have heard people who would say that it is okay to chant anything. You can chant Amen, you can chant, uh, anything, the Om or the mantra. However, the yoga should be with the mantra. Otherwise, it is not yoga. Then let's call it exercise. That is the more appropriate name for it. So do you think that is because we Indians do not own the things that we should own? You talked about this fantastic concept that the root of happiness is dharma, the root of dharma is artha, and the artha is rajya. Do you think that when it comes to the state, while morality is very important for a human being, as a citizen, I should be morally correct. But do you think that when it comes to state, I should not expect the same amount of morality from the state? Because how else would the state be able to wage wars? And waging war is not always, uh, expansionism. It can also be to defend yourself, to gain new territories in a positive way. So, do you think this moral expectation that we have from a state to say that, oh, this is right, this is wrong, as you can see right now, for the religious appropriation which is happening, uh, to pose Macaron to say that, okay, now the state should take a stand. So do you think that we should not expect our states to be so moral as the expectation should be from the citizens?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the gun control issue, yes, I mean, yeah, considering the way current things are going, especially the threats to Hindu civilization and the demographic changes that are happening, I definitely say that it is time that we loosen the gun laws, and we need to empower people, because see, the bad elements in the society, the criminal elements in the society, is anyways they have the access to all these weapons in an illegal way, right? It simply cannot be. You cannot stop it. You can monitor it, but you cannot stop it. It is the innocent who uh, who is the victim, and we become defenseless. It is not just the gun laws. I think we need to uh, provide easy access to other forms of weapons as well. And this is what my personal opinion is. Yes, of course, not in a way that it is in US and they can go and buy it in a departmental store, of course, but in a not in the way it is currently exists in India as well. So that is true. That is one thing. On yoga, to quickly respond, there are many reasons for what is happening with yoga and the way it is happening. But one of the important reasons is also, of course, the fault lies with us, with our own teachers, because in this to simplify teachings to people who are not from our culture, we diluted it to begin with. Asana is not yoga. Asana is one limb of yoga. And unfortunately, this was not much stressed. And we promoted asana itself as something else, as something isolated on its own. But this is first stage of issue wherein we started this, and this is happening. And lot of Indian teachers, Hindu teachers do this mistake. They try to downplay. I mean, don't play with statements like yoga is science, it is not religion, and all those things. This has serious problems in a long term, and it is having this problem. This further leads to appropriation and all. But the fact that those who are appropriating, they're kind of basically stealing the knowledge that is there as well. They are stealing, they're appropriating, they're distorting. That you cannot take that away from those who are doing it by saying that our teachers are at fault wholly. Our teachers are at fault, yes, for what they did, but those who received and distorted it, they share an important blame as well. They are at fault as well. The last part was, I think, about morality. See, I think, morality, let me use the Indic term, dharma. Dharma is different in different situations. It is not that state does not have dharma. It is not that state cannot stay in dharma. In fact, see, when it says dharmasya mulaha artha and sukasya mulaha dharma, what it is basically saying that ultimately the state's goal is to create yogakshema, the sukha for all its citizens. And the way to do it is dharma. But the power is what which facilitates the practice of dharma. But dharma in the individual context is completely different in the context of a state, especially in the geopolitics. When we are speaking of geopolitics, I have a specific thing in mind, how our nation interacts with other nations in the world, right? Take the example of we have these agencies of RAW, research and analysis wing, and America has CIA and all this Mossad and etc. You cannot ask them to work by our conventional notions of dharma. What is the conventional notion? Conventional notion is samanya dharma. Manusmriti says ahimsa satyam asteyam shaucham indriya nigraham. We have to be ahimsa, we have to be satya, we have to be asteya. Asteya means non-stealing. But those involved in this intelligence work, they do everything against them. They routinely involve in deception. They routinely involve in different levels of violence. They routinely involve in, even stealing. You got my point, right? This conventional sense cannot be applied. So in these situations, the Vishesha Dharma, which is the context specific, the profession specific Dharma, outweighs the Samanya Dharma, conventional. When it comes to state in its rule, even internal rule, not just outer dealings, but how it rules the country, the first and foremost and the most important aspect is yogakshema. It is the duty of a ruler to provide yogakshema for all the citizens, overall well-being of the citizens. Is it providing that? Two, it is the duty of the ruler to protect its citizens, to punish the criminals, to protect the innocent. See, the Rajadharma is very clear. So when we speak about the state and its morality and its ethics, we have to speak about Rajadharma. We have to evaluate the states from not from the conventional notions of ethics, but the notions of Rajadharma, whether the state is adhering to Rajadharma or not. And being in Kali Yuga, things have become very complicated, right? So I hope this answers your question.
There is one part where I dare to disagree with what you have said. You talked about, acquiring the territories that we have lost. A lot of people talk about Akhand Bharat, while logically and spiritually, I agree with that, but not geographically. Because the moment you talk about Akhand Bharat, can we ignore the fact that the people who have taken away that land have, how to say it politely, yeah, they have completely different religious political beliefs, and I think that would be very toxic if we even think about getting it back. So
okay, I got your point. I got
Yeah.
your point. The point, and I'll be very blunt in my answer. So this is what I was telling. We need to not. You should not apply conventional notions of ethics to the issues of geopolitics. Second, we need to understand the situation from a very civilizational perspective and not just immediate perspective. See, your sympathies and I understand you are speaking from a standpoint of compassion, a standpoint of for someone who finds it very difficult to even think about the kind of uh, violence this expansion of territory could involve, including change of religious demography in the conquered lands. Right? I understand your question. Right? This is the question. But let me give a historical perspective. How did what is today Pakistan, what is today Afghanistan, became what it is today? How did this happen? These were areas ruled by Hindu kings. These were areas where Hindu traditions like Shaiva tradition, Bauddha traditions were practiced. Forget Pakistan and Afghanistan. That is the case with Kashmir. The demographic change, the change in religion in these territories did not happen peacefully. Our ancestors died waging the protecting their lands. Our ancestors were forced at the end of the sword to convert. They were forcibly converted. Their daughters were raped. They were taken slaves. They were killed. There was huge violence. Please understand this. There was huge violence. It did not happen just like we were the victims. Our civilization was the one attacked. Their ideologies is the aggressor, right? If we are today taking it back, it simply means that we are taking what belonged to us back. If we are changing the demography, the religion today in those population, it simply means we are making them return to their original roots. We are righting a historical wrong. No matter what the means that needs to be applied, it may be violent, it may not be violent. There may be many ways, but there is other aspect to the issue. If you say that what you are essentially saying is our enemies can use any means necessary to convert us, to kill us, to maim us, but we should not do anything about it. We should be sitting ducks because that is happening in India. See, let us come to present situation. In 50 years from now, Hindus will be minority in major parts of India. And another 50 years from then, Hindus will be wiped out of the face of the earth. It may be 100 years or it may happen in 200 years, but this is definitely going to happen if if in our sense of mistaken application of senses of compassion and pacifism and ahimsa, we will be slaughtered. We need to understand this very clearly. What is love jihad? Can you justify love jihad? What are we doing to counter it? What about rape jihad? The enemy has clear-cut goal. They have a very clear-cut goal. See, the Islamic sects, they divide the world into Darul Harb and Darul Islam. And they want to convert Darul Harb into Darul Islam. That is a very simplified, straightforward goal they have. And they are working towards it. They are working towards it. Whether we will sit blindfolded, turning a blind eye or not is our choice. But they will do everything they can to attain this. If we have to survive today, then we have to counter this at home and out. So, retaking back the territories that I am speaking, this is we would be doing not for some kind of greed, some kind of some kind of ideological reasons the way Islam has done or way the Christians have done. We will be doing it to establish a global world order again, a dharmic world order, wherein there will be dharma everywhere. A strong Chakravartin alone is able to establish dharma. See, Manusmriti has a very beautiful verse. It says, irrespective of whether we live in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, or Kali Yuga, a king, between the time and the king, it is the king who is prominent, supreme, because a king has the power to create Satya Yuga, to create Treta Yuga, to create Dwapar Yuga, or create Kali Yuga, based on the kind of rule he gives. Your disagreement is from a commonsensical way of looking at things. It comes from a heart, but that application is a misapplication when it comes to geopolitics. We cannot apply a conventional sense of ethics. We cannot apply conventional pacifistic sense or a compassionate spiritual sense of our ethics when it comes to Rajadharma. Because Rajadharma See, who is a Kshatriya? A Kshatriya is not a sannyasi. A Kshatriya is not one who who thinks in a myopic way. See, what you think, your disagreement is basically rooted in myopic understanding about the geopolitical issues. And I'm not. This is not a criticism, and this is merely an analysis. Most of the people have this understanding of the world. That is why we have a what is called as Raja Dharma and Kshatriya Dharma, wherein those who are in position of power have to think in a certain way. They have to understand Dharma in a certain way, and they have to take difficult decisions. It is not going to be easy decision. Let me tell you. And I am not saying I am not a warmonger. I am not saying kill everyone. So that is not what I am arguing here. What I am arguing is we need to establish a dharmic world order. We need to take back what we lost because they rightfully belong to us. They were violently taken away from us. And we were, see, these lands that we lost, these are our sacred lands. We have our temples in Pakistan, for God's sake. Our Hindu women were converted there even in the last 50 years. We need to take back our sacred areas. Our loyalty should be to Sanatana Dharma, to our land, which is sacred to us. You see it from this perspective, then it will be a king's duty, it's him or a ruler's political leadership's duty, their burden to decide what is the best course of action to achieve this, right? It is very much possible that not a single drop of blood is shed in such a transmission, such a expansion. It is possible. See, we do not know, but we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Because the fact is, we like it or not, we are fighting this civilizational war which has been imposed upon us for the last 1200 years. And today, we are in a very unique situation wherein we have to take a last final stand. If we don't take this stand, then perhaps in another 2 or 3 generations or 5 generations, our grandkids and their grandkids, perhaps they will no longer be Hindus. They will not know who is Shiva, who is Kali. They will not have any affinity to temples. There won't be any temples. The whole Sanatana Dharma will be wiped out. I know, I have a hope, I have Shraddha in my Devata that we will not be wiped out. We will take corrective actions. And it is this hope, it is this Shraddha that made me to do this presentation, made me to write on this. So I disagree with your disagreement, but I think we can take more questions and we can always agree to disagree. Yeah.
One of the criticisms against the mandala theory is that it is this kind of mandala theory that actually kept India disunited in the 7th and 8th centuries. Right? So, what is your take on that? I mean, are you reinterpreting the mandala theory, or I mean, how are you doing this?
No, I think, see, that the criticism, I have not studied that criticism, but I don't think that criticism is correct because, see, what is that? What is this mandala theory? It's a framework for any king or any nation to understand the geopolitical field and play the game. That was true 2000 years ago. That is true today. That will be true 2000 years from now. The only the the landscape changes a bit. The kind of players changes a bit. But the basic framework remains the same. See, today I just as explained, we can analyze the current global situation using this theory. So this theory is basically a framework to understand and play the chess, so to speak. As far as disunity is concerned, see, the point was India was, though Chakravarti was an ideal, see, we were politically a decentralized civilization. And this had worked well for us for a long time as well. See, we had great empires like Gupta Empire, but we also had, under these great emperors, we also had Samanta Rajas, the kings and rulers who were minor in nature. yes, this created kind of issue. Uh, you know, there was some kind of disunity, definitely. But this decentralization kind of also saved Hindu Dharma. Because I was reading this book, I suggest you to read Sitaram Goel's Heroic Hindu Resistance to Muslim Invaders. You see that when one king was defeated, the whole country did not become Islamized. In what happened in Europe, the one of the the pagan rulers was, I think it was Constantine, if I'm not wrong. He was baptized. He became Christian, and then within a few decades, a century or at best, the whole of Europe became Christianized, more or less. Right? This did not happen in India because political power was decentralized. One king was defeated, his son or uncle or somebody started an uprising, and he kept fighting. We kept fighting. We never stopped fighting. We only stopped fighting in 1947 when we accepted the partition of India as a permanent fact which will never be changed for eternity and eternity, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So before that, we never accepted the lost territories as a final thing, right? So yes, but I don't think mandala theory has anything to do with it per se. Mandala theory is a framework, theoretical framework to analyze, to understand, and play the global game.
Sir, it was very enlightening to listen to you about Vishguru. My question is not about Vishwaguru. My question is about India itself, considering that we are fighting a civilizational war and we are losing. I think right now we are losing because considering the population which is constantly thriving to divide India through thousand cuts, and also taking into consideration the political anesthesia in our country and divisiveness of Indian society into different castes, how gigantic this task is to win our civilization in our very own land, and then to think about Vishwaguru and what are the fundamental things we can do so that we will win this civilizational war.
As I mentioned somewhere in the talk, that it cannot be this and that. I mean, it cannot be first we will do this and second we will do that. I mean, we have to, as far as I see it, we have to tackle the internal threats as well as external threats together. Because this we cannot achieve a reversal. Yes, you're right. We are currently losing as far as I see it as well. We cannot reverse our fortunes in a night, right? It will take many years, many decades to do it. So we have to uh, put in efforts in both these issues simultaneously. I mean, because many of these issues are actually connected. Consider, for example, the global Islamic network. The global Islamic network is very strong and it funds the Islamism in India. The monetary backing, the trainings, and all these things that is happening in India is they're all connected to global things as well. And there are global forces which are trying to, Rajiv Malhotra ji speaks about breaking India forces, right? So there are NGOs, there are Christian evangelists, there are so much funding, and there are these funders like George Soros and Amit Dayal foundations. We are waging a multi-dimensional, multi-fronted war. So we need to tackle all of them together. At one hand, there are certain things that only a state can do. And on the other hand, there are some things that we as individuals can do. On the home front, what individuals like you and me can do, what Hindus can do to survive. I have written an article, you can search in India Facts. It is titled Agenda for Hindu Survival. What individuals can do. It is just a list of suggestions as I see it. I see three areas wherein basically we can protect ourselves. The three A's I call is preserve, protect and promote, preserve our traditions, our knowledge traditions, our practices, festivals, protect them from the interventions, legal interventions, state interventions, NGO interventions, etc., evangelical interventions, and then promote authentic practices, prevent appropriations, etc. So each of us have to decide where we fit in. I am a writer. I use my pen as a weapon to write, and my speech as a weapon to speak. But somebody else may use art as a weapon. Somebody else may use politics as a weapon. It depends upon each individual, and we can all contribute in this way. So I request you to read that article and see what feels right for you.
Yeah, just I mean, what I thought, I expect a disintegration of countries like China, Pakistan, and then simultaneous cultural invasion. Then we can think of armed aggression instead of armed aggression. I think cultural aggression stance is much better than other concept which is not which is alien to Indian context. Thank you.
There is nothing alien to Indian context. Territorial aggression or expansion is not alien to Indian context. I don't know whether you saw the full presentation or not. The very point of the presentation was to show that the notion of territorial expansion is not alien to Indian civilization. It is part of Indian civilization. It's the vision of Indian civilization, and we need to embrace that as our vision for going forward. So I think that is the comment I have.
Here I want to ask you that everyone knows as we are the collective commonwealth of communal Hindus, as we can a common pool. What you think that everyone knows everything, but do you think that we have only 20 years to go because the population of Muslims is rising at the pace of the 8% and we are only at the 1.2? So what think that how we can take these things into the masses? We have to work a lot. We have to train our coming generation with the arms and ammunitions. A political agenda is the one thing. Cultural upliftment is another thing. What should be the procedure and the implementation part of the thoughts? What do you think for that?
See, we are facing a very complicated situations and happenings that is around us. But the good thing is, as a society, we are also waking up slowly but surely. I mean, just see in the aftermath of Shabrimala judgment how much protest that happened. That was something. It's a game changer, you should say, in Hindu civilization history in the last few decades. The point I'm trying to make is there are certain things which only state can do, and there are certain things, there are other things which we can all do in our limited capacity. But we need to lobby the state. We need to lobby the political parties at power. Unfortunately, we do not. First of all, we do not have a lobby system in Indian political scenario the way US has. But more importantly, somehow the Hindu cultural issues, especially, seems to be the current dispensation is apathetic to Hindu cultural issues, Hindu issues as a whole, as in many sense as well. So we need to make these issues a kind of election issues, election bearing issues. We need to create a consensus on all these issues, even the demographic issues. See, awareness is the first step, and I think all these things that we are doing, including the session, is taking a baby step. But one step can lead to a great thing, every drop counts, as they say. So yeah, we all need to do what we can, and I again refer you to my article on Agenda for Hindu Survival, where I have just shared some of my thoughts on what we can do as individuals. Because you said you're an advocate, you are in a legal field. So from your field, you can fight for the Hindu causes in a legal manner, wherein the Hindu issues are being affected, right? And similarly, a writer can do what through writing, and somebody else in politics, and somebody else in government, a bureaucrat can do what is in his power. So there are certain things, of course, individuals cannot do. It has to come from the government actions, so that we have to push the government to do what we want them. So we need a critical mass which would accomplish this. So that again comes back to the issue that we need to create awareness with whatever means that is available. And I think Sangam Talks and platforms like this are doing wonderful work in bringing these issues to the